This is the Bounce Back Generation podcast.
I immediately had parts where saying, you've lost your children and it's all your fault. You were dealing with multiple forms of trauma and you perpetuated some of the trauma yourself, even though many others did as well. And in spite of all your efforts to protect your children and teach them about boundaries and do all that, not only did you not protect them, but you also harmed them.
As mothers and daughters age, the relationship can be filled with joyous sharing, best friend status, and ongoing support. But for many of us, it's a complicated relationship with childhood histories coming up and complexities and complications that seem way too difficult to reconcile. Julia and Drea are mother and daughter and spend years in not talking. Julia is an instructor in internal family systems therapy, known as IFS, and she and Drea are here to talk about how they were able to work through their complicated relationship and now are even working together in a new company they started called Cornsilk, which provides peer-based teaching and wellness for Indigenous people and allies, and also uses internal family systems therapy techniques. There are not enough mental health professionals for all of us. If we're going to get healthy, we must heal together as a community and help each other. And that's what Bounce Back Generation's all about. We're a nonprofit that creates and shares tools that build resilience for the challenging times we live in. Let's get to know a little about Julia and Drea. Julia Sullivan is one of the first Latina women to obtain an MBA from Stanford. She's a social activist who integrates her Latina roots and Indigenous spirituality with all she gained from her Level 3 IFS training. She co-founded the Council for Indigenous IFS in 2021 to create a forum for cross-tribal resource sharing. She and her husband honor their blended family of 7 grown children who, as Julia says, have the courage to be who they really are. Drea Sullivan is the youngest of Julia's 4 children and the youngest of 7 after Julia remarried. She was often told she was, quote, too quiet and sensitive as a kid, and has only recently realized she's neurodivergent and has undone some destructive thought patterns to heal from depression, anxiety, and colonization. She's really into mutual aid, mildly terrified of the climate crisis, aren't we all, and feels like different, kinder ways of life are possible. She is the executive director of Cornsilk and Self-Led Leaders. We will be providing information on IFS and Cornsilk in the show description. Julia and Drea, I have so many questions, and I want to start with the most simple and basic question, which is, what is internal family systems therapy, or IFS? And honestly, whenever I think of IFS, even though I know what it is, the image that comes to mind is a family sitting around trying to hash out their family issues. But it's really actually about the individual. So can you explain what IFS is?
Yeah, I would love to. And Jennifer, before we do answer that, in Indigenous practice, the way we start any conversation is by, first of all, letting the other people know, who are we? So I'd like to first start by introducing myself. I am Julia Arellano Sullivan. I am the daughter of Ray and Hilda. I am the granddaughter of Julia, Juan, Jovita, and Tomas. I am the great-granddaughter of Andrea, Manuel, and others whose names I were not given. I am of Ralamuli descent of Chihuahua, Mexico, and I was born and raised in East San Jose, here in the Bay Area. And I'm really happy to be here.
I'll just introduce myself. I'm Drea, and I was raised by my mom. She was a single mom for 8 years, and I grew up in the Bay Area of California. When I was 5, my mom took me and my 3 siblings on our first mission trip to Mexico to build houses. So I got to see poverty for the first time and started learning that I needed to stay aware of and grateful for what I had, and that there would always be others that needed help. And the other thing about me is I'm neurodivergent. We didn't know that at the time. I just felt like an alien. um, and but growing in my like understanding and appreciation of that, and now I'm a graphic designer, and now starting this project with my mom.
One last thing, I use she, her pronouns. And Drea?
Oh yeah, she, they.
Yeah. So IFS. First of all, yeah, it's not about the family the way we normally think about the family. It's really about what's going on inside. The reason why IFS came to be called internal family systems is that Dick Schwartz, Dr. Richard Schwartz, who created the model, was a family systems therapy. And he was working in an eating disorder clinic and started noticing that as he started listening to what was going on in his clients when they were dealing with food addiction, it sounded a lot when they were talking about what was going on inside. There were a lot of the similar dynamics that he saw in his family systems therapy. And so he goes, but this is inside a person. So I'm going to call it internal family systems. That's where the name came from. The way I describe it, it's the voices inside your head. Mm-hmm. It's the voices that talk to you all day long, no matter what. And as I think most people know, there's more than one voice. Yeah. There's one voice saying, eat that, do that, take that out of here, or I like this. No, you shouldn't. I mean, it's like they get into these battles with each other, right? And in IFS, we just call those parts. Those are just different parts of you. And all these parts will battle it out or have opinions or want to go away or want to do whatever it is that they want to do because of burdens that they're carrying from experiences they've had. Now, what's needed is underneath all those parts is yourself. And when we talk about self in IFS, we use an uppercase S, self, because that is your truest, most authentic essence of who you are. And the self doesn't walk on eggshells because the self knows it's okay, you're okay, and everything will be okay because we have the ability to talk about whatever it is that's going on.
And you didn't grow up with IFS. You're just learning it now.
Yeah. So my mom started learning about IFS about 2010. And she's the kind of person always like looking out for new ideas and technologies and things. And so some of those turn out to be maybe a little sketchier than others, but should move on from those ones and things. But so when she first started talking to us about IFS, I was like very much side-eyeing it. But so then I think around 2018 or 19 is when we started our like no contact estrangement period. And basically like the reason that started is because even though like growing up, my mom had us in like family therapy with like a Christian counselor and talked with us a lot about like emotional safety and physical safety. But we've had a lot of generational trauma to heal from and try to undo. That my mom's always been like very intentional and open about talking with us about. But I felt like we got to a point where I felt like I was trying really hard to accommodate her sensitivities and to like try to explain myself, and it was just taking a lot of energy, and I wasn't like quite sure how to word it, and we just kept like hurting each other basically. And so it felt like it came to a point where the safest thing to do was withdraw and sort of like give ourselves that time apart. And at the time I like genuinely didn't know if we would ever reestablish contact. Anyways, so I had done some graphic design work for her before our estrangement.
Mm.
And so when she reached back out to continue that project, I was like, this is actually like, I am very interested in this. And so then I started actually learning more about IFS. And now, she had explained to me before, it's kind of like Inside Out, the Pixar movie, which I think is like just a really nice, simple illustration of it, like the different parts of your brain. But what I've really come to like about IFS is it provides really simple language for people to use and makes it easy to sort of step outside your current mental or emotional state or to reflect on a previous one. A friend had given me this book called Out of Our Heads by Alva Noe, I think, or Noe. And on the back it says, "We are not our brains." And so just that, like, okay, it's not totally this like wacko idea. Like there's like some neuroscience findings that are echoing a lot of what IFS is talking about. And ultimately I see it as encouraging like a gentleness with yourself and helping to like depathologize. Like, you'll see, if you Google IFS, that like it's non-pathologizing. But I think it's also helpful in like sort of reducing the stigma of like different labels that may have been ascribed to you. And so there's, like dissociative identity disorder, for example. And so like with IFS in mind, it like, I think in a healthy way kind of normalizes the idea that there are these different parts of us. And for certain people, it's a more pronounced experience of it.
So let's talk about that conversation you have with yourself. So IFS is about, number one, being able to have those conversations internally with yourself. And usually it is done it can be done in the presence of a therapist, right? And I know, Julia, what you do is you train therapists on how to use this technique. So can you talk about if I said, look, I just want to do this for myself, I don't want to go to a therapist to do it, what would you do?
Well, let me go back to actually use the real example of what happened between me and my grown children, right? Which Drea was one of them, but three of them basically stood together at my front door and said, "We're done with you. We're out of here." And I thought when we didn't resurface in 2 weeks, I thought, okay, I'm going to give it 6 weeks. When we didn't resurface in 6 weeks, I go, okay, this may never. What Drea said before, where she was not certain that she would ever re-engage a relationship with me, it was about 6 weeks out that I realized I might have lost them forever.
Wow.
And okay, so I immediately had parts were saying, you've lost your children and it's all your fault. You were dealing with multiple forms of trauma and you perpetuated some of the trauma yourself, even though many others did as well. And in spite of all your efforts to protect your children and teach them about boundaries and do all that, not only did you not protect them, but you also harmed them. And I had parts that were devastated, shaming me, yelling at me, other parts that they were shattered. So much so that about 6 to 8 weeks, I actually got into a car accident and totaled my car. Be from sobbing, from listening to a song. That, Julia, you've done a lot of work, but if you don't do more work, deeper work, you're going to hurt yourself or somebody else.
Mm-hmm.
And so whether your kids come back or not, you've got to dig even deeper than you have in the last 6 weeks, because I was digging deep in that 6 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
And so all those parts that were judging me, instead of me saying, stop it, go away, I can't take this anymore, this is unthinkable. See, that's the battle inside your head. I had to say, okay, let me see if I can separate you all out, because
Mm-hmm.
all of you, there's a lot of different voices, and get to know you one at a time.
Yes.
Okay. And so that was the work that I started doing. I started understanding. And then that was where the 8 C's of self, which is, I want to just say what they are. They're clarity, compassion, creativity, calm, curiosity, confidence, courage, and connectedness. So I had an IFS person basically call me out one day and say, Julia, you're showing no curiosity about this.
Mm-hmm.
And I go, what do you mean? I know exactly what's going on. My kids are gone. They're not coming back. And it's my fault. What is there to be curious about?
Right.
And she just was sitting there going, there's a lot to be curious about. So, in a good kind of tough way, she said, time to get curious, like right now.
So let me go back for a second. So you're feeling a lot of feelings. And I want to point out that when you're talking about these parts, it's not necessarily you have parts that are feeling shame and parts that are feeling guilt and parts that are feeling anger and all that. Those are characteristics of those parts, but as you delve deeper into them, any one of those parts can have a lot of different feelings attached to them. So
Yes.
sometimes we think of, oh, I've got to pull out this feeling of anger and really look at it. But
Oh,
maybe
yeah.
what you've got to do is listen inside instead to what the voices are saying to you, or,
Yeah.
So how do you do that? I mean, not everybody has a voice in their head. So they might
Right.
have something
Yeah,
else, right?
exactly. Sometimes thank you for saying that, because sometimes parts show up as a crick in your neck, or fidgety, like all of a sudden you're fidgety, you got to move, you got to get up, you got to pay. There's some energy is trying to get your attention.
Got it.
And so what IFS teaches you to do is to turn towards that versus away from it.
So let's say you have, okay, I've got this pain in my shoulder that won't go away. So using one of those 7 principles, talking about curiosity again, you just get curious. You say, what is this about? Right. So let's talk about how you would use the other C's. So let's say clarity. How would you apply that to that kind of thing?
Yeah, what you would begin to do, what I did is I said, okay, curiosity, I'm recognizing that I've not invited you into this situation that's going on right now for me. So please, I'm recognizing that I need more curious energy right now, so that I begin to open up a whole new level of understanding for how the relationships that mattered the most to me got this broken. Mm-hmm. And so then the thing about the 8 C's, which I really love, is when you invite, there's 8 C's. Yeah. There's 7 B's. That's another part. That's what the Indigenous Council came up with, 7 B's, because in IFS, we're all into alphabets like that. But anyway, we, when you invite one in, they're like a little buddy system, right? So you invite one in and then all the others start showing up. So when I became curious, the next one that showed up was compassion. Mm-hmm. If you're going to be curious about what's going on, then you're going to need to up your game on compassion.
Right.
So that you can face whatever you come to learn. Okay. Right. And then to be able to face all that with courage, you need to look squarely at it, so that you can have more clarity about what happened and what was yours and what was others and what was society's and what was their wounding that they got that you were unaware of
Yeah.
that may or may not have anything to do with you. And so it just began to be so big. So Drea, let me turn it over to you about what's your.
Yeah, so for me, I'm like kind of it's really helpful for me to like talk things out loud with people. Um, and so that's like probably like the main way actually that I try to process my thoughts and think about different parts of myself.
Can I have you guys do like a demonstration of what that would look like?
Ooh.
Like if you were, or you and me, you know, however, whatever feels comfortable.
Yeah.
I would love to have a way to demonstrate to people how you would do that kind of.
So it's, you know, we see it as like, okay, we're meeting together. We just saw each other yesterday to talk about like website stuff. What do we like as individuals, not like workers or, you know, but as people feel that we need to say to each other or just like processing like how we're doing, how we're thinking. And so it's a nice way to take that time because I usually am just kind of like going along. I have a, you know, to-do list a mile long and just that like intentional space to stop and say, yeah, what do I want to have said? Um, and so for instance, like right now, it'll be a little meta, but you know, I'm thinking about how this is the first podcast I've ever been on. Um, and uh, my siblings haven't reconnected with my mom yet. And I've tried to communicate to them that um, while like it is my hope that that would happen, I want them to know that I respect their timeline and for them not to feel any pressure from me. And that just because I am doing this work with my mom doesn't mean that I've forgotten the hurts that they have. You know, there was a few weeks ago when my sister was visiting us in Calgary here, and I had a meeting with my mom, and I didn't know if I should tell her, you know, who I was having a meeting with, but then my sister asked. So I was like, oh, I'm chatting with mom. Like, do you want to say hello? You know, you don't have to. And so I let my mom know, and you know, she kind of said very similar things of like it's on her timeline, like don't feel pressure. Um, and then you know all those meta thoughts of like, should I have told, like, should I have just said like, oh, don't worry about it or not mentioned anything. Um, but yeah, just kind of it makes it the framework of sort of like IFS and stringing the beads has helped me to acknowledge like the messiness and to be a little more comfortable with that uncertainty that it has.
That's such a great example because I mean, as someone who has a family that also has all kinds of issues and definitely stretches of estrangement, I'm not talking to so-and-so for whatever reason. Without that, what you just did is you walked yourself through what you were feeling inside and allowing that to articulate and bloom so that you could very carefully say, these are my intentions. This is what I want my sister to feel. This is what I want to be able to express to my mother. This is what I want to be able to express to both of them. This is a space I want to make. And the alternative, at least in my family, was, and I'm sure for a lot of families, is F you, not talking to you, none of your business. I don't want to talk about this because it's too complicated, right? I mean, that's how we normally do things because there are so many layers. And it feels like if you start to unpeel the layers, it's just chaos. So what IFS seems to offer is a way to start to organize those different voices, those different feelings that you have, those different attitudes, the fears versus the possibilities, all of that just is a jumbled up mess. And And it sounds like IFS is able to kind of pull that out and lay it out. Now, you guys are able to do that. You were able to get to this point where you've built some kind of platform for your relationship based on the work that you've been doing with IFS. So can you talk about that process? What was that like? How did you do that? Can you outline it for everyone?
Yeah. So as we just kept working together on it was like sort of a branding project, and I like to be very thorough in my research. So asking lots of questions about like, okay, how did you in your work get to this point with you're leading these types of meetings and then you run this council, like how did those people end up on it? My mom demonstrated that she was up for those questions. Like she didn't even blink at them. And previously in the work that I'd done with her, those conversations would have been much more difficult. I would have wanted to put in more energy to like try to word things as gently as possible, to try not to like sort of upset the balance in our communication. I'm really not trying to make it seem like it was all her or anything like that.
Moms are crazy. Let me just say that as a mother and as someone who has a mother, no matter how perfect you are or imperfect, all moms are seen as crazy by their kids and probably are.
Yeah. And
you guys make us that way.
No, okay. I also want to add, there was a period in my life where the people that I feared the most were my children.
Yeah.
And my friends used to say, God, you're afraid of your children. I go, oh yeah, I'm terrified, man. And when we're all together, that's the scariest, one at a time, I can kind of keep track, but man, you get us all around the table. And
why did kids scare moms and why do moms scare kids?
Well, they scared me because all the eye rolling would begin and all the, you're so lame. You're so random about what you care about, and it's all and it kind of all bullshit and stuff like that. And my friends would say, gosh, Julia, you're so afraid of your children. I don't get that. Now they were people, by the way, who only had one child. And I said, you don't know what it's like to have, there's more of them than you. And they have more time to talk about how screwed up you are. And so then when you all get together, it's like they know already and you're just coming to the awareness all at once. So, so that's what there was fear. And so I think that then when you try to lay on top of that, oh, let's try to do a project, and they go, well, why are you doing it that way? It's like, what do you mean? It's like, I'm already ready to be defensive.
Totally
because I'm putting that simple question on top of a foundation of fear.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's why what I have come to understand is I had a part that felt, okay, I have a part that has felt not good enough in many situations, right? I have a part that, a judgy part that is then telling myself, you sure better get good enough faster, or else you're going to lose these people or this project or this job or this whatever, this relationship, And so when the stakes are so high, when there are people that matter that much to you, it's like, yeah, I get crazy, right?
Yeah, but the big thing is that you are able to identify that you even feel that way, right? And I think,
right.
And I don't want to put words in your mouth, Drea, about what it feels like to be a daughter of someone, but I think for kids looking at parents, there's so much of that identity thing where I do not want to be like her, right?
Yeah, that was literally right. How I put it in my brain for a long time, right? I was, and I think part of it had to do with the fact that we are so similar. Like one of my best friends in high school, I was over at his house and his mom said like, oh, I met your mom like at something, and like, man, you have a lot of similar mannerisms and like you're so much alike. And I was just like, no, I'm not. Like, I do. Okay, maybe I am, but I don't want to be.
Yeah, you don't want to. You want to be your own person. but those are the dynamics. And actually what's happening is this desire to be together, but there's so many other voices coming in that say, don't even get close to them, because there's just like little like electrical shocks are going to happen. So how do you use IFS to dig those things out slowly? So I'll let you kind of continue on that process. And it'd be great. I mean, I don't know if it's possible, but could you do like a demonstration of how you might have like do an example, not something for real, but just like take an example of something that you would have an IFS based conversation together so that you can have that connection again.
Well, it's like just yesterday, we had to make a decision to delay a program that we were going to launch on March 1st, a communal collective unburdening thing. And so this is how it went yesterday. See, right now, we just did this yesterday, and I said, okay, I have parts that are saying, the world is saying, those losers, they're delaying this program again, and can't they get their act together and deliver? Now, Drea's responsibilities are to create the platform. So you can see that even though I'm talking about what I'm thinking people are saying about me, this could very easily activate Drea's parts about going, what you're really talking about is what's being said about me and my work and my skills and my things, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, okay, so Drea, go ahead.
Yeah. Yeah. So as this is the first time I've been in this type of role, executive director. And like I've been setting up our, like sort of this administrative infrastructure. What platform do we use to store our files? And given all of that, and that we're trying to like not just do like excellent work, like make an excellent product, but we know that how we do that work, whether it's we're working alone or with each other, like we want to be excellent to ourselves and each other. And it seems like a pretty clear, just like throwing that out the window. If we say, no, we said that we have to have the program on this date, so we're going to stick to that. Cue many sleepless nights for probably both of us to get up, all of the relevant things going. And over time, I've just had like less and less reservations about saying that sort of thing, just to her about like, I've been feeling a little maybe unappreciated or maybe not trusted with how careful I am trying to be and the judgment that I'm trying to show in how we prioritize things. And before, that probably would have sent her into a little bit of a tailspin.
Right.
She may have like ended the call early. Before, like growing up, she may have just like left our apartment or house and but she's been able to hear that, and then we actually have that conversation. And she reflected to say, yeah, I can understand why you feel that way. And so she clarified a little bit, that wasn't her intention, and becoming more self-aware of those parts of like, okay, there's definitely that like insecurity that's coming up.
Me being able to say that I have parts that are thinking that other people are saying this. I would have been so afraid to speak that out loud to our team because I wouldn't want to hurt their feelings, right? But Drea actually brought these things that we call the 4 freedoms to our team at one of our first meetings. So I'd like to tell you what the 4 freedoms are. In an empowering environment, everyone has the following freedoms. Number 1, you have the freedom to talk about the way you see things rather than the way others want you to see. Number 2, you have the freedom to ask about anything puzzling. Number 3, you have the freedom to talk about whatever is coming up for you. And 4, you have the freedom to say that you don't really feel you have one or more of the preceding 3 freedoms.
Okay, you made that up, Drea?
No,
No.
Drea found
That's
it.
really good.
Isn't that amazing?
That's really good.
So, and it says reproduce with permission from conferencesthatwork.com. But Drea found this.
I
And
love that.
She brought it to the team and we were going, bingo, because one of the things that we set out as our intention was, yes, we're going to be teaching IFS content, but we are going to be eating our own dog food, as they say. And then what I even realized once I spoke out, oh, well, those people are saying that, and those people, I'm going, oh, those are parts.
Yeah.
Myself knows that's not true. Myself knows that's not true.
Right.
Myself knows that there probably nobody's thinking about me and us and whether it's going to be March 1st or December 31st. I mean, there's nobody.
Self with a capital S.
Myself with a
right.
myself with a capital S knows.
So I want to make sure that people really understand how they can use this. So here's my way of thinking about it. If we kind of think about yourself like an actor would think about themselves in a scene, that when you're acting, you have a script, and we walk into, whether it's work or school or your home life, there's basically a script of what you do. You go and you have dinner, or you go to your meeting or whatever, and there's certain behaviors that are expected of that. So that's one level. And then every good actor constantly ask themselves about their character. What's my motivation? What's going on inside me? So that throughout your day, your relationship process, the situations that you find yourself in, IFS is simply saying, constantly ask yourself, what's going on inside of me? What is my motivation here? And then you set up a platform, if you are agreeing to use IFS within yourself or with other people, that allows you to express that motivation, express what is coming up. This appears to be going on like this, or I know that I have stuff inside me that is reacting to what's happening right now, which may or may not be reality for you guys, but it feels real for me. And you just have opened up a lot of space to explore those things, get them out in a way that is not triggering for other people, hopefully, and not triggering for yourself as well, which is what you were talking about earlier, Drea, not pathologizing, making you feel like I must be crazy because I feel this way. And instead saying, there's reasons why I feel this way from my past and my childhood, and from experiences I've had, and scary things that happened, and things that didn't go the way I thought they were supposed to, or I don't understand, I'm confused. And
but
I think that's
can I make one important edit to what you just said?
Yes, please do.
Because you said, get in touch with your motivations. And what I would say, it's not getting in touch with your motivations necessarily. It's trying to determine, are you coming from a part, or are you coming from self? So it's an energy thing, right? Yeah. So it's like, is my energy coming from self, or is it coming from a part? Because I could have said the same thing from a part.
Right.
And it would have been, my hair's on fire and everybody better get right. Right. But when I can come from self and speak for a part, like, oh, I have a part of me that's thinking people are saying that. Can you see how I'm speaking from self for my part?
And using that language too. I have a part of me that feels like this. Really ratchets it back a lot. And people get it more like, because I have parts of me too that don't feel all comfortable with this. So let me just take a second, make sure that I understand the differences. So the parts are parts of ourselves. We hear their voices. We experience them in our bodies. We experience them coming up in situations that feel uncomfortable. The 8 C's are the ways in which we approach how we communicate with them and
Well, the
understand
eight
them.
C's are the 8 C's are indicators of self-energy.
Okay. So if you're approaching the situation with those 8 C's, the clarity and the compassion and all of those, curiosity, that means you're coming from this larger self and approaching the situation through those lenses, so that you're you're kind of not screwing it up anymore, I guess is a way to look at it.
Yeah.
And then the chart is a tool that you can use so that you can understand how you're approaching a particular subject, and you can kind of reflect on it and say, how much in this situation am I really looking at this with clarity or compassion or curiosity or one of the C's? And then by gauging that, you can say there's some room here for my growth and my deeper understanding of myself. So there's just a lot of tools to use, and once you get a grasp on those tools, you can use them for yourself. I always say it'd be fun to use IFS just role playing, talking to myself in the mirror, and someone might think I'm crazy, but I'm actually doing a lot of mental hygiene by doing that. I'm sort of sorting myself out. But you can also, as Drea said, use it as a way to create conversation with somebody, where you can start the conversation by saying, what are you feeling? Well, parts of me right now are not feeling great about my life, and parts of me are really hopeful about this, and and then you can have these really deep, wonderful conversations with people where you're truly communicating. Yeah. Do you have a passage you can read to us, Julia, from your book, just a paragraph or two that you feel like?
So here's my quote from the book, and this is from chapter 9 of Altogether Us, and the name of the chapter is Embodying IFS with Native American Clients. And there's 3 other co-authors of this chapter. I was one of them. Susan McVicker, Greg Paisley, and Pete Patton were also co-authors. Learning IFS is a process like seeds planted in one form deep in the earth, which take in nutrients, burst out of their husk, and boldly make the journey to earth, air, water, and sky. Each seed becomes a tender shoot that requires changing levels of care as the shoot becomes strong. The shoot grows roots that run deep to nurture the plant, so it can weather the seasons and storms that will come. Walking in Indigenous ways and healing with IFS is a lived experience that unfolds over time. Both are nurtured in community and supported by building a trusted relationship with another who abides in the teachings in their spirit, mind, words, and actions. This person comes alongside you to support your learning, growth, and healing.
Wow. That's a vision.
That's
a vision to keep in your mind.
But I just want to say that when that person that's coming alongside is your daughter, it is an amazing gift that is beyond description. Drea, is there any closing comment you'd like to make to listeners?
Yeah, I guess I had written down a different quote, not from Julia's book, but just about like IFS and group work, that because IFS can help you be gentler with yourself, it becomes easier to be gentler with others. And I started reading this book called Black Liturgies by Cole Arthur Riley. And one of the things she writes in it is, belonging is not too great an ask. Find your sacred company, and may they find you and cherish you. We're worthy of a belonging that does not demand uniformity, but understands and honors our stunning particularity. We believe in sacred mutuality, the belief that we're not just welcomed, but we are vital to the life and beauty.
We like to end all of our podcasts by asking this one question, which is, who made a difference for you growing up? And the reason we ask this question, just to give some context, is I think a lot of people don't realize that it's little things that you do for kids when they're little that can make such a difference long term in their life. So it's always surprising to hear. Who'd like to go first?
Well, I can say that the person who had the biggest impact on me as a child was my father, because my father always believed in me and saw me for me and taught me to appreciate who I was and how I was. My mother felt, I think, a little bit more puzzled by me, and my brothers felt like they wanted to squish me. And so they would mock things like that I like to read books. And my way to have fun was to go to the bookmobile on my own with my little cloth bag so that the bag didn't tear, and check out books. And I just thought that was the greatest thing. And I thought it took me into all these other worlds that I had from the east side of San Jose no idea about. And my dad loved that I did that. And so we became book reading buddies my whole life. And here was a man who was the first to graduate high school, and who, after his passing, received a commendation from the Santa Clara County Board of Supervisors.
I'm going to cheat a little bit and choose a category of people, teachers, because I will include my mom in there, because obviously, she taught us so much as kids. But especially for me, I didn't know that about grandpa, that like you were reading buddies, but like I was also like very different from my siblings and wanted to just be a bookworm, with like lots of crazy stuff going on that I didn't understand and like freaked me out. And like I seemed to be judged for that too. So like then books were really like my refuge in a lot of ways. And I mean, like I saw this Instagram post the other day saying like that this teacher had started teaching her students that fiction is like imagination learning rather than like fact-based learning. They really were such a like solid, safe refuge. The person who's teaching you, it's like their job to like meet you where you're at. And in so many ways, like all of my teachers, so many of them were able to do that. And like I still think about them a lot. And like, I kind of want to go back and like reach out to my elementary school and be like, can I get their contact information? Because I just want to tell them that like they really did, like they like saved me. Like I don't know what I would have done without them.
This has been the Bounce Back Generation podcast. Our producer is Liam Donaldson. I'm Jennifer Dillon. Bounce Back Generation is a nonprofit. And if you like what we do and want to support our work, particularly for our work with young people on reducing violence and improving health and wellness and mental health outcomes, please visit our website, bbgtv.org or bouncebackgeneration.org, and you'll find a donate button there as well as in the show notes. Thanks for listening.